I nearly ran her over, barefoot, blood on her face, standing dead center in my lane at 2:30 a.m. Not on the shoulder. Not waving me down. Just standing there. Like she was waiting for me. I slammed on the brakes so hard my rig shuddered, tires screaming in protest against the cold asphalt. My whole body snapped forward against the seatbelt, my heart punching my ribs so hard I thought it might crack something. When the truck finally groaned to a stop, she was still there, framed perfectly in the wash of my headlights. She didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. She just stared. She couldn't have been more than 19 or 20. Long hair, dark and soaked to her cheeks like she'd been standing in the rain, except the night was bone dry. She wore a white nightgown, ripped at the bottom, and her bare legs were streaked with something dark I didn't want to name. I sat there gripping the wheel, hands slick with sweat, willing myself to breathe. The CB was dead silent. The highway around me was dead silent. Finally, I cracked the window an inch and called out, "You okay?" No answer. She just slowly, almost mechanically, lifted one trembling hand and pointed behind me. My blood turned to ice. I didn't want to look, everything inside me screamed not to, but I forced a glance into the side mirror. Nothing. Just empty road stretching back into the dark. I whipped my eyes back to the front. She was gone. Gone like she'd never been there. For a long, gut-wrenching minute, I sat frozen. Engine rumbling low. Headlights cutting across nothing but empty, cracked pavement. I started to wonder if I'd fallen asleep behind the wheel, dreamt the whole thing. Long-haul fatigue plays tricks on you if you let it. But then I saw it. Farther down the road, maybe 50 yards ahead, something moved. Fast. A figure, running straight toward me, arms pumping, legs eating up the distance. And I realized, it wasn't her. It was someone else. Panic surged up my throat. I slapped the truck into gear and started rolling forward, slow at first, scanning the road like my life depended on it. Because maybe it did. As I inched closer, the figure sharpened in the headlights. A man this time, tall, thin, clothes hanging off him like rags. His face wasn't right, though, mouth hanging open too wide, arms jerking unnaturally with every stride. Something primal fired in my brain, and I floored it. The engine roared, gears screamed, and the truck lunged forward. I didn't even check the mirrors. I just drove, the figure shrinking in my rearview until he disappeared into the black. The next exit was 10 miles ahead. 10 miles of white-knuckled silence, staring into the dark, waiting for something, anything, to jump out again. When I finally peeled off onto the exit ramp, I pulled into a deserted gas station and killed the engine. The sudden stillness was deafening. My heart was still sprinting even though my rig sat dead in the lot. I leaned my forehead against the steering wheel and tried to convince myself it was just exhaustion. Hallucinations. Stress from too many nights alone on the road. But deep down, I knew better. When I finally worked up the nerve to step outside, the night air hit me like a slap. Cold. Heavy. I walked a slow circle around the truck, checking the tires, checking the lot. And that's when I noticed it. Something had been scratched into the grime on my passenger side door. 4 simple letters drawn by a fingertip. Help. My stomach flipped. I staggered back a step, heart hammering against my ribs. That's when I heard it. From the sleeper cab behind me. The soft, unmistakable sound of someone breathing. The breathing was shallow. Wet, almost, like whoever was back there had been running for miles and was trying not to make a sound. I stood frozen outside the cab, my hand half raised toward the door handle, my other hand instinctively patting my pocket for my phone. But of course, I'd left it charging inside. Right on the dashboard. For a few long seconds, I just stared at the sleeper window, praying I'd imagined it. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe it was the engine cooling down. Maybe it was anything other than a stranger hiding 6 feet from where I stood. But deep down I knew. I took a step back. Then another. My boots crunched loudly against the gravel, and the breathing inside shifted, quickened. Whoever was in there knew I'd heard them. I turned and walked, fast but trying not to look like I was panicking, straight into the gas station. The guy behind the counter looked up from his phone, eyebrows raising when he saw my face. "Help," I said, my voice a shaky whisper. "There's someone in my truck." Without asking, he reached under the counter and slid out a cordless phone. "Calling the sheriff." I nodded, trying to keep my breathing steady. Outside, my rig sat under the buzzing yellow lights, silent and still. But it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like it was watching me now. 5 minutes later, though it felt like an hour, a county deputy rolled up. Young guy, maybe mid-20s, baseball cap shadowing his face. He took one look at me and didn't waste time. We approached the truck together. He had his hand on his sidearm, eyes darting between the windows. I hung back, heart in my throat, every muscle in my body screaming to run. The deputy knocked once, hard. "Sheriff's office! Come out, hands where I can see 'em!" Nothing. He yanked the door open and pointed his flashlight into the sleeper. And that's when the smell hit me, heavy, metallic, rotten. The deputy cursed under his breath and climbed halfway inside. I heard the shuffle of movement, then the unmistakable click of handcuffs. He dragged someone out a second later, not the girl, not the man from the highway, but a third figure entirely. A man, older, maybe 50, filthy, rail-thin, with wild, bloodshot eyes. His clothes were shredded, and his skin was so pale it looked almost blue under the harsh lights. One hand was clutching something, a rusted switchblade. The deputy patted him down roughly, found a stained piece of cloth tucked into his waistband. It took me a second to realize what it was. A white nightgown. Torn. Soaked with something dark. My stomach heaved. I stumbled back, bile burning my throat. The deputy slammed the guy into the side of his cruiser and cuffed him tight. "You're lucky you didn't try to open that door yourself," he muttered. It took me a minute to find my voice. Who is he?" The deputy shook his head grimly. "Local nut job. Been missing for months. Real violent history." He paused, glancing over at my rig. His voice dropped. "And if you hadn't stopped at this station? If you'd pulled over somewhere darker?" He didn't finish the thought. I didn't need him to. Later, after the paperwork, after the cruiser disappeared into the night, I sat in the driver's seat, staring at the empty lot. The gas station attendant tapped on my window at one point, offered me coffee. I thanked him but didn't move. I couldn't. Because when I finally worked up the nerve to check the back of the cab, really check it, I found something tucked into the narrow space behind the bunk. A photograph. Old, wrinkled, water-damaged. It showed a young girl, barefoot, in a white nightgown. Smiling. Standing by the side of a long, empty road. And scribbled across the bottom, in shaky handwriting. Mile 59. The voice came through the CB at 3:13 a.m., scratchy and low, and it knew my name. I hadn't keyed the mic, hadn't said a word. But somehow, whoever it was already knew exactly who was driving eastbound on I-70 that night. Breaker, the voice crackled, like sandpaper tearing through a speaker. "Come on now, Danny, you know you can't outrun it." I damn near dropped my coffee. Because I hadn't used my CB in days. And no one calls me Danny except people who knew me years ago. Back before I grew the beard, back before I ran freight full-time and stayed clear of anyone who remembered who I used to be. I reached out and flicked the radio off, my hand trembling a little more than I wanted to admit. Static cut out, replaced by the steady hum of the tires on asphalt. The horizon was nothing but blackness stitched with distant stars. Not another truck for miles. I figured it had to be a fluke. Maybe a bleed-through from a different channel. Maybe a prank. Still, my skin crawled under my jacket. My mind raced with possibilities I didn't like. People I owed money to, bridges I'd burned years ago, folks I'd ghosted when I left that old life behind. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was just tired. I checked the time. 3:17 a.m. My next fuel stop was another 90 minutes ahead, but I considered pulling into the next turnout just to splash cold water on my face. Shake it off. That's when the CB clicked back on, by itself. Soft static fuzzed through the cab, and then the voice again, low and wet and far too close. "You can't turn it off, Danny boy. You know that." My hands clenched the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. I slapped the power switch again. Harder. This time the CB stayed dead. Or so I thought. Until the voice started laughing. No static. No crackle. Just that low, broken laugh filling the cab, like it was leaking in through the air vents. I swerved onto the shoulder for a second, tires screaming, engine rumbling in protest. When I finally got control again, heart slamming against my ribs, I did the only thing that made sense. I pulled off at the next turnout. It was one of those empty ones, no bathrooms, no lights, just a patch of gravel and a busted guardrail. I killed the engine, killed the lights, and sat there breathing hard. Silence. Finally. For a few minutes, I just stared out the windshield, the trees looming black against a darker sky. No other vehicles. No movement. No sound but my own rasping breath. Maybe it really was just a glitch. Maybe it was the kind of mind games that happen when you've been on the road too long, too tired, too damn lonely. I was reaching for my thermos when I saw the shape. At first, it was just a shadow between the trees. Could have been a trick of the light. But then it stepped closer to the edge of the turnout. It was a man. Tall, broad-shouldered. Wearing what looked like an old, torn jacket that hung off him like wet rags. His head was low, chin tucked to his chest, like he hadn't finished deciding whether to look up yet. I sat frozen, watching him. He lifted his head slowly, and in the faint light leaking from my dashboard, I caught a glimpse of his face. I knew that face. It was supposed to be dead. And he was smiling. I knew that smile. I'd seen it 6 years ago, on a man bleeding out on a concrete floor, staring up at me with the kind of forgiveness that cuts deeper than hate. Raymond Keller. I blinked hard, shook my head, tried to wipe the image away like a fogged-up mirror. No way. No possible way it was him. Because I'd watched Ray die. Because I'd made damn sure he did. The figure outside took a slow, dragging step closer. I slammed the lock button on my doors. A useless reflex. It felt like trying to hold back a flood with a screen door. The CB crackled back to life on its own, speaker hissing, and Ray's voice came through clearer this time, as if he was sitting right beside me. "You remember what you did, Danny boy? You left me down there. You didn't even stay to watch me choke." I squeezed my eyes shut, gripping the wheel so hard my palms hurt. I hadn't thought about Ray in years. Not since the night a deal went sideways in a warehouse outside Dayton. Not since I ran while he bled into the dirt, gasping, begging. And yet, here he was. Or something wearing his face. I risked a glance back up, and the figure was gone. Vanished. Panic flared white-hot in my gut. I scanned the mirrors, twisting left and right, every muscle in my body tense to the point of snapping. Nothing. Just darkness. Endless and deep. I fired up the engine, tires spitting gravel as I peeled back onto the highway, the CB still spitting soft static like distant whispers. My headlights cut through the void, but the road felt narrower now. Like the trees were pressing closer. Like the world itself was trying to squeeze me out. Minutes blurred into miles. I told myself if I could just make it to the next truck stop, the next island of light and life, I'd be okay. But the CB wasn't finished. "Where you running, Danny?" the voice whispered. "You know the road just circles back, right?" I yanked the plug from the back of the radio. Killed it dead. Still, the voice came. From the vents. From the speakers. From inside my own goddamn head. "You can't outrun it. You can't bury it. You carry it." Up ahead, a green highway sign flashed by in the gloom. Exit 147, rest stop, 1 mile. I floored it. When I pulled in, the place was deserted. Not even a stray sedan parked under the dead lights. I rolled my rig into the far corner and killed the engine again, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my teeth. The silence came heavy. But not clean. A soft tap 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 sounded against the passenger side window. I whipped my head around, and there he was. Face pressed against the glass. Rotting. Smiling wider now. Eyes milky white and full of something that wasn't life. My body reacted before my mind caught up. I threw the truck into gear, tires screaming against the pavement as I peeled out of that rest stop like the devil himself was clawing at my bumper. I didn't stop. Not for hours. Not until sunrise burned away the night and the world started to look normal again. And even then, even now, I don't trust it. Because sometimes, when the night gets real still, and the highway hums just right, I still hear Ray's voice. Calling me. Laughing. Waiting for the next turnout. I only saw him because his hand was sticking up from the ditch, fingers twitching in the high beams like he was waving me down. I was rolling westbound on Route 50, what they call the loneliest road in America, somewhere between Ely and nowhere. No towns. No lights. Just endless flat scrubland and a cold black sky pressing down so hard it made you feel like you might get crushed if you stopped moving. I'd been on the clock 12 hours, pushing it because dispatch said they needed the load in Carson City by sunrise. So yeah, I was tired. Dog tired. That kind of tired where your eyelids scrape the windshield, and you start seeing shapes in the fog of your own exhaustion. When I spotted the hand, I figured it had to be one of two things. A real person in real trouble. Or another hallucination I'd regret stopping for. I hit the brakes anyway. Because out here you stop. There's nobody else coming. I pulled onto the shoulder, hazard lights flashing weakly against the night. Grabbed my flashlight from the passenger seat. Opened the door into a wall of freezing desert wind. Hey! I called out, stepping into the brittle grass at the edge of the ditch. You okay down there? No answer. Just the sound of the wind scouring the land raw. I pointed the flashlight into the ditch and scanned slowly. At first I thought it was just junk, a busted tire, a heap of old clothes. But then the pile moved. Twitched. And I realized it was a man, curled up like a spider crushed under a boot. His limbs twisted wrong, like he'd fallen hard. His jeans were shredded, one boot missing, skin scraped raw across his arms and face. Jesus! I muttered. Hang on, man! I'm coming down! The slope was steep, dirt and loose rocks giving under my boots as I slid down toward him. The closer I got, the clearer it became. He was alive, all right. Chest rising and falling in shallow jerks. Eyes open but blank. Like he was looking right through me. When I crouched beside him, he grabbed my wrist. Hard. His grip was ice cold, fingers digging into my skin like he was trying to claw his way inside. Truck! He rasped. Voice dry and broken like sandpaper. Truck took her. I stared at him, heart slamming against my ribs. What truck? His mouth opened wide, too wide, like he wanted to scream but had forgotten how. No sound came out. Just this desperate, choked gasp. Then his body spasmed, and he collapsed into the dirt, eyes fluttering shut. Gone. I checked his pulse. Weak but there. Still clinging. My mind raced. No cell signal out here. No way to call for help. My only choice was to get him into the cab, haul ass back east, and pray to God he didn't die before we found a hospital. I scrambled back up to the road and opened the passenger door wide, yanking the seat forward as far as it would go. The whole time, my brain buzzed with what he said. Truck took her. Her who? The thought of it made my skin crawl. Somebody else was out here, maybe hurt worse. Maybe dying. I turned back toward the ditch, flashlights slicing through the dark, and that's when I heard it. The sound of an engine. But not from the road. From somewhere deep in the scrubland. A low, gurgling rumble, like a semi rolling slow with a blown-out muffler. Getting closer. I clicked off the flashlight instinctively, heart hammering, ears straining. The rumble grew louder. Closer. Heavy tires crunching over dirt and stone. But there were no lights. No headlights. No markers. Just sound. like something moving in the dark, heavy and hungry. And whoever, or whatever, was driving it didn't want to be seen. The rumble kept growing, and my instincts, the ones that had kept me alive behind the wheel all these years, screamed at me to run. Forget the man in the ditch. Forget the whole goddamn desert. Just get in the truck and go. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I crouched low by the side of the road, heart slamming in my ears, scanning the darkness for any shape, any movement. And finally, I saw it. Something massive rolling through the sagebrush, dark as oil and twice as slow. No headlights. No chrome gleam. Just a black mass, rumbling across the earth like it didn't care whether it crushed trees, fences, or bones under its wheels. It looked like a semi, sort of. Only wrong. Too tall, too narrow, wheels too close together, frame lurching with every bump like it was stitched together from parts that didn't belong. And perched high in the cab, silhouetted against the faint glimmer of starlight, was a figure. I couldn't make out the face. Just a long, slouched body, one hand draped lazily across the wheel. Like he was out for a casual midnight cruise through hell itself. The truck, if you could even call it that, slowed as it neared the road. Paused. I held my breath. The ditch man lay still below, barely visible now except for the pale stretch of one arm. The black rig idled, low growls shaking the ground under my boots. And then, slow and deliberate, the figure turned its head toward me. I didn't see eyes. Didn't need to. I felt them lock onto me. Heavy as a chain around my chest. My knees nearly buckled. Every part of me screamed to dive into the cab, gun it, leave rubber tracks all the way to California. But something deeper, something primal, pinned me to the dirt like a rabbit under a hawk's shadow. The black rig started rolling forward again. Toward me. No headlights. No horn. Just the relentless growl of its engine gnawing through the silence. I bolted. Sprinted for my rig, stumbling across the loose gravel, lungs burning. I grabbed the door handle, yanked it open, and threw myself inside. The man in the ditch, forgotten. The minute I slammed the door, the black truck's engine roared, louder, angry now, and I saw it barreling toward me, headlights still dead, moving like a predator that didn't care if you saw it coming. I jammed the key into the ignition, twisted hard. My engine coughed once, then caught. I slammed it into gear and floored it, gravel spraying behind me as I tore out onto Route 50, tires howling against the pavement. For a moment, I thought maybe I was clear. Maybe it had just been some nightmare stitched out of exhaustion and too many empty roads. But when I checked the mirror, my blood iced over. The black rig was right behind me. No lights. No markings. No plate. Just a screaming roar closing the gap with every second. I pushed the pedal harder, praying the old girl had enough left in her to outrun whatever the hell that thing was. Mile markers blurred past. 1, 2, 3. Finally up ahead, salvation. The faint neon glow of a truck stop perched like a tiny island in the endless dark. I didn't slow down. I ripped off the exit, tires screeching, barreled into the lot, nearly clipping a parked tanker as I swung wide. When I skidded to a stop under the canopy of lights, I killed the engine and stared back at the highway. Empty. No sign of the black rig. No roar of its engine. Just silence. I sat there, panting, hands shaking so badly I had to brace them against the steering wheel to stay still. After a long time, I finally climbed down from the cab, legs wobbling under me. And there, chalked onto the filthy side of my trailer in jagged, oily handprints, were 3 words. She's still mine. I never found out who she was. Never found the man in the ditch again either. And some nights, when the desert wind howls just right across Route 50, I wonder if that black rig is still out there. Still looking. The way station was dark, abandoned, and according to dispatch, hadn't been in use for 5 years. So why was there a rig parked on the scale, still idling? I coasted in slow, engine grumbling low, headlights slicing across cracked asphalt and frost-bitten weeds sprouting through the pavement. The sign said closed in 2 languages, barely hanging from a crooked post. And yet, there it was. A bright red once, now dulled by time and filth, squatting dead center on the old scale pad. Lights off. Windows black. Engine humming like a sleeper who hadn't quite decided whether to wake up. It was just past 3 a.m., and the temperature had dropped into bone-cracking territory. My breath fogged the windshield as I eased to a stop a few yards behind the idling rig, my own truck rattling in the cold. I sat there a minute, staring at it, my gut twisting. Something was wrong. You don't find rigs running in deadweight stations, not unless somebody's in trouble. Or worse. The voice of every safety instructor I'd ever had screamed in my brain. Stay in your cab. Lock your doors. Call it in. But the silence, the wrongness of it, gnawed at me. And I could see movement. Barely, just the suggestion of a shadow shifting in the cab's dark windshield. I popped the brakes, grabbed my heavy flashlight from the side pocket, and climbed down into the freezing night. The air was brutal. Sharp and hungry, slicing through my jacket, turning my sweat cold against my skin. The whole world felt muffled, deadened, like even the coyotes didn't want anything to do with this place. I circled wide, boots crunching across gravel, flashlight beam bouncing across the crumbling scalehouse, the rusted outway signs, the twisted chain blocking the outbound lane. The red rig sat there, massive and still, exhaust burping lazy white clouds into the air. I stepped up to the driver's door and tapped the metal with my flashlight. No answer. Tapped again. Harder. Nothing. Swallowing my nerves, I grabbed the handle and hauled myself up onto the step. The window was rolled up, and through the dirty glass, I could just make out the cab interior. Empty. Or, almost. There was something strapped into the passenger seat. Something bulky, slumped forward, arms pinned awkwardly by what looked like rope. I rapped on the window hard enough to sting my knuckles. Still no movement. That's when I noticed the door wasn't latched. The slightest tug on the handle popped it open an inch, a wave of sour, metallic air rolling out into my face, the unmistakable stench of sweat, diesel, and something far worse. Something that didn't belong. I hesitated. Every instinct I had begged me to walk away. Get back in my truck, call the highway patrol, let them clean up whatever horror story had been left here to rot. But curiosity, stupid and stubborn, won. I pulled the door open wider and swung the flashlight beam inside. And what I saw made my stomach knot into a fist. The driver's seat was empty, but the keys were still swinging gently from the ignition. And strapped into the passenger seat was a man. Or what was left of one. Face slack, eyes half-lidded, skin gray and sunken like old fruit. Mouth stitched shut with rough, uneven thread. Hands bound tight with grimy rope, wrists purple and raw where he'd struggled. Pinned to his chest, stabbed right through a filthy work jacket, was a piece of cardboard. One word scrawled in black marker. Payload. And before I could even move, even scream, the rig's engine revved, hard and sharp, shaking the entire scale pad. Nobody was in the driver's seat. But the truck was shifting into gear. The truck lurched forward an inch, just enough for the whole cab to groan against its own weight. I stumbled back off the step, boots slipping on the frost-slick pavement. The door swung wide open above me, and from inside the cab, the stink of death poured out thicker, heavier, choking the air. I should have run. Any sane man would have. But something kept my boots nailed to the ground. I watched, heart hammering, as the rig trembled again, the engine revving low and mean, wheels jittering like it was straining against invisible chains. The dead man in the passenger seat rocked with emotion, his stitched mouth bobbing like he was trying to scream but couldn't. His head lolled toward the open door, and for one horrifying moment, I swore his eyes met mine. Accusing. Begging. Something. The engine growled louder, and the whole front end of the truck tipped forward as if an unseen hand was yanking it off the scale pad. That snapped me out of it. I turned and bolted back toward my own rig, flashlight forgotten, heart punching against my ribs like it was trying to claw its way free. Behind me, tires squealed. Metal groaned. The red rig roared down off the pad, dragging something underneath it, something that shrieked across the concrete like rusted metal on bone. I didn't look back. I scrambled up into my truck, fumbled the keys into the ignition, and fired her up with a roar that nearly covered the deafening sound of the other rig surging forward. Mirrors shaking, I yanked the wheel hard, tires screaming against the broken pavement as I swung wide and tore out of that cursed station. In the mirror, for just a split second, I saw the red rig's headlights flicker on, not yellow or white like normal headlights, but a sick, deep orange, like dying coals in a graveyard fire. And then it was coming after me. Fast. Faster than any truck should have been able to move on busted asphalt and crumbling shoulder. I gunned it. Throttle to the floor, wheels chewing up the frostbitten road as I hurtled back toward the main highway. The red rig stayed right behind me, its high beams flaring hotter and brighter until it felt like the sun was burning holes in my mirrors. I knew if it hit me, if it caught me, I wouldn't survive. I don't know how I knew. I just knew. Every muscle screamed as I white-knuckled the wheel, dodging potholes, praying the old girl would hold together just a little longer. Mile markers blurred past. Mile 10. Mile 11. Up ahead, salvation. The ghostly green glow of the on-ramp back onto the main interstate. If I could just hit the open road, maybe, just maybe, I could outrun whatever hell had slipped into the driver's seat of that corpse hauler. I didn't dare check the mirrors again. Didn't dare lift my foot off the gas. I hit the ramp doing 80, the trailer bucking behind me like a terrified animal. Tires skidded, almost lost it, but somehow, I stayed upright. When I merged onto the main highway, the world opened wide in front of me, miles and miles of clean, black asphalt, empty and blessed. And the red rig was gone. No headlights. No roaring engine. No burning eyes. Just the cold hum of my own engine and the blood pounding in my ears. I drove until the sun clawed its way over the desert hills, painting everything gold and broken. Only then did I dare pull into a truck stop, kill the engine, and sit shaking behind the wheel like a man who just barely dodged his own funeral. Later, when I finally worked up the guts to check the side of my trailer, I found something scratched deep into the grime. Not words this time. Just a simple symbol. A heavy chain. Broken. Hanging. Waiting. The neon sign wasn't even on the map, but there it was, buzzing in the dark. Maggie's Diner, open 24 hours. And I was starving. I'd been running solo through Wyoming for 10 hours straight, eyes gritty, stomach clawing at itself. I hadn't seen another vehicle for the last 50 miles, not even a pair of headlights. Just endless two-lane blacktop and the broken skeletons of abandoned gas stations. So when I saw that flickering red and white sign rise up from the nothing, it felt like a mirage. But the exit was real enough. Exit 197. A crumbling ramp sloped down to a cracked parking lot ringed with bent streetlights, all of them dead except the one right over the diner, casting everything in a sick yellow glow. I pulled my rig in slow, crunching over loose gravel. There were no other cars. Hell, there weren't even footprints in the dust. The diner looked like something out of the 1950s, chrome trim, big windows streaked with grime, and a fat, stainless steel door propped halfway open. A few flies buzzed in the entrance light, circling slow and lazy like they had nowhere else to be. I sat there for a minute, hand hovering over the ignition, second-guessing myself. Something about the place made the back of my neck itch. But hunger won out. I killed the engine, grabbed my jacket, and stepped out into the brittle cold. The second I crossed into the light, I noticed the smell. Grease, smoke, old coffee. And under that, something sweet. Rotten sweet. Like fruit left too long on a windowsill. I pushed the door open wider and stepped inside. A bell jingled overhead, a lazy, half-hearted sound like even it couldn't be bothered to do its job anymore. Inside, the diner looked abandoned. Chipped red booths. A cracked linoleum floor. Dead jukebox slumped in the corner like a broken toy. But the coffee pots were still full. The grill behind the counter still hissed and steamed, like somebody had just walked away mid-shift. And then I saw her. The waitress. standing behind the counter. Perfectly still. She had bright blonde hair piled into a messy beehive, a pale pink uniform stained at the hem, and a smile so wide it made my skin crawl. "Welcome to Maggie's," she said, voice flat as a dead line. "Sit anywhere you like." I cleared my throat. "You guys open?" She blinked. Once. Slowly. "We're always open." I slid into the nearest booth, feeling every spring creak under my weight. The waitress didn't move. Just stood there, smiling. A laminated menu lay stuck to the table under a layer of sticky film. No prices. No descriptions. Just single words, printed in crooked black letters. Pie. Coffee. Burger. Special. I glanced up at her. She hadn't stopped smiling. "Burger," I said, voice hoarse from hours without talking. She nodded once. A sharp, jerky movement like a puppet on the wrong end of its strings. Then she turned and disappeared through the swinging doors into the kitchen. The diner was silent again. Too silent. No clatter of plates. No voices in the kitchen. No music. Just the buzz of the overhead lights and the faint squeal of the coffee warmer burning itself dry. I shifted in my seat, suddenly desperate to hear anything. A radio, a truck pulling in, hell, even the hum of my own rig outside. But there was nothing. Only the sound of something dripping. Somewhere behind the counter. Steady. Thick. I turned my head, peering toward the far end of the counter, and that's when I noticed the floor behind it was dark. Not stained. Wet. A puddle spreading slowly out from under the swinging kitchen doors. And the smell, that sickly sweet rot, got stronger. So strong it made my eyes water. I stood up fast, my boots shrieking across the cracked tile, hard hammering. That's when the swinging doors creaked open just an inch. Just enough for me to see what was inside. And someone else smiled back at me. But it wasn't the waitress. It wasn't the waitress smiling back at me through the crack in the kitchen door. It was a man, or what used to be one, grinning with a mouth that was too wide, lips stretched thin and splitting at the corners. His skin was waxy, yellow under the harsh kitchen lights, and his eyes. They didn't blink. They just stared. His head tilted slowly to the side, like he was trying to figure out what I was. Or how long it would take to break me apart. Behind him, more figures shifted in the shadows, hunched shapes moving awkwardly between the steel counters and hanging pots, like animals learning how to wear human skin. And the dripping noise? It was louder now. Thick ropes of something dark sliding off the counters, pooling onto the floor. Blood. Old. Blackened. Stinking. The waitress stepped back through the kitchen doors just then, carrying a plate. "One special," she said, that dead smile still painted across her face. The plate trembled in her hands as she set it down in front of me. I didn't want to look. Every cell in my body screamed at me not to. But I did. On the plate was a burger, all right, but the meat was wrong. Gray. Stringy. And sticking out from the bun, half hidden under wilted lettuce, was a piece of something that looked horrifyingly like a human finger. Still wearing a ring. I stumbled back from the booth so hard I knocked the table sideways. The plate clattered to the ground, splattering black grease across my boots. The figures in the kitchen started moving faster now, bumping into each other, jerking in twitchy, puppet-like motions as they stumbled toward the doors. The waitress just stood there, still smiling. "You really shouldn't waste food," she said sweetly. I didn't answer. Didn't think. I just ran. Bursted through the diner's front door so hard the bell ripped free from its mount and skidded across the parking lot. I hit the cab of my truck at a dead sprint, keys already in my hand, heart slamming against my ribs hard enough to make my vision blur. Fired up the engine. Threw it into gear. Tore out of that lot, gravel spraying like shrapnel. In the rearview, the diner shrank fast. The neon sign flickered violently, then winked out altogether, leaving the whole exit ramp drowning in darkness. And when I merged back onto the highway, punching the gas like a man running from hell itself, I glanced at the GPS mounted on my dash. Exit 197? Didn't exist. Wasn't listed. Wasn't anywhere. Just clean black highways stretching east and west forever. I didn't stop driving for 8 hours. Not until I hit Cheyenne and the sun had risen high enough to burn the nightmares off my back. And even now, even today, when I'm grinding down some lonely stretch of road at 3 a.m., stomach growling, eyes heavy, I don't stop for diners. Especially ones that don't show up on the map.